we've just accepted these things that are true if you stay in the procreation dopamine paradigm, but they're not true at all when you switch over to the oxytocin. Even people that have like medical diagnoses like ED or paper thin lining of the vagina, where literally physically they're not supposed to be able to have any kind of intimacy or intercourse anymore, they're able to because their body just starts rejuvenating and opening up and lubricating and yes.
Drop in,
Unwind
and recalibrate.
as we shift your mentality and your reality.
Let's elevate alongside one another as we keep the vibes high
And we keep the consciousness ever evolving in this collective of high vibrational frequencies.
Welcome to the High Vibe Collective podcast. We're your hosts,
Aaron.
and Stephanie.
Welcome to the High Vibe Collective podcast. Today we have someone super special to us on. This is Carolin Hauser.
Thanks for having me.
It's an honor and a joy. So Carolin has been playing a big role in our lives recently, helping us through really fascinating things in relationship and even business.
Yeah.
And so, Carolin, who are you and what do you do?
I'm Carolin. I'm from Germany originally. I was born there. I came to the States 20 years ago. I didn't even know that something like entrepreneurialism existed. I just knew I didn't fit in. And not fitting in Germany is harder than here for sure, because coming here, I realized, oh, there is something like being an entrepreneur. And so it kind of led me on a journey of becoming an author and a speaker. And before I left Germany, I was trained as a naturopathic doctor and humanistic psychotherapist, learning kind of alternative modalities like Gestalt and family constellation therapy and that type of stuff.
So,
And my purpose in life is really helping couples, helping men and women find peace. And so that's really what my work's been revolving around the last 8 years, I would say. Yeah.
Amazing.
yeah, enter into our lives, which has been a blessing. So Carolyn is a Sedona local. So I think we probably first locked eyes on the dance floor.
Yeah, right.
At a
Yeah,
static
4 years
dance.
ago, right when I got here, I saw you and you're like, oh, you look like me a little bit.
And then everyone was like, oh, you're her.
Our sisters.
It's so fun. Yeah. And, just to kind of share like how Carolyn entered the scene for Aaron and I, because of course, most of you may know we've been, through the ringer the last bit of time. Plus also life in general has been really hard for a lot of people the last few years. And for those who've been in any kind of union, I feel like the ups and downs have just been escalated. So Carolyn shared what she did and how she thought she might be able to support us. And it's been extremely supportive, extremely supportive. Do you want to share a little bit?
Sure. So without explaining what you do exactly, I'll share that from the first experience that you offered us as a gift, paradigms that I thought were just lifelong things that would be forever because of who Stephanie is and who I am individually, and our dynamic melted away almost instantly, and it changed my paradigm. It made me feel like, oh, that isn't a permanent thing. That can completely fall away. It felt like a quantum shift, and it felt like the best thing ever.
Good. Well, it is quantum shifts.
Yeah. So that's pretty vague, but I'll definitely let you describe in more detail what it is that you're doing and how it helps couples and people.
Yeah. Do you want me to dive into that right now?
Well,
Or-
yeah, I mean, even just mentioning,
there.
quantum shift, I know that there's people just being like, okay, so yeah, what is that?
Yeah.
Right. What does that even mean?
Yeah, I'll expand a little bit. Part of what my attempt really is to make the woohoo stuff really scientific or accessible. And so I had an experience about 11 years ago where I was catapulted out of my body. I have to say it was really a low point in my life. I had been diagnosed with chronic fatigue and adrenal burnout. I was going through a divorce and I was not living my purpose. I was mainly being the support person and had 2 little kids and was doing dishes and diapers, and my body was just done. And
This
so,
is a lot of people that you're
Yes.
describing right
Yes.
now, by the way. Yeah. So, okay.
So I have been there. I've been like traumatized by the laundry monster that's never ending on the couch and like just always there, especially when you cloth diaper your children and things like that, as
Totally.
good attachment parents will do, and co-sleep and
Yeah.
those things. So, but I digress. So I was basically catapulted out of my body, and then a voice said to me, Carolyn, your life isn't done yet, or your work isn't done yet. And I was sent back into my body, and for an entire week, I was in a total state of, I don't know if you would call it enlightenment, or it was just clarity. And the way this clarity was is that I could totally see how my state of being influenced the world around me. Like there was no more time delay between it. So I would think of something and that something would occur. And I was also in a state of total harmony and openness. So meaning I was living in an area that was a little bit shady. It was we called it the ghettos of Santa Barbara. I was still pretty good, but like where the
Okay.
train tracks are. And the people there were a little bit like, And so I realized I had been really afraid of people. And during that time, I was just open and not afraid. And my entire reality was just completely different just because my energy had shifted. And anytime my mind would try to go down a negative path, it was literally like music was playing in a harmonious, in a harmonious way. And anytime I was going down something in a negative direction, the music would go out of tune. So it was like, wow, how much of my time do I spend in this negative state of being, and how much is where I've ended up. A result of me being negative, without like beating myself up or anything like that. So what also became clear during that week is that I needed to go into the pursuit of pleasure, which at that point I really didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if it meant eating chocolates and having lots of sex, or I had no clue, because at that point I was 34 or something. I felt like I could literally walk down the main shopping street in Santa Barbara naked and nobody would turn around. That's how unattractive and just unenergetic and dull I felt, basically. And so ever since then, and then the state ended after a week, which was a bummer. And then ever since then, I've been trying to figure out, okay, what was it that got me there, and what can we do collectively as people that get us in that state? Because in that state, everything was perfect, everything was flowing, everything was provided for, everything I needed was there, and it was paradise. And that's kind of like how the paradigm of paradise was born. And I'm just going to pause for a moment because I don't want to take up all the airspace. But
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah, and I think that was one of the leading questions you came in with us, was like, okay, well, what would it take to, well, you probably know the question better than I do. What would it take for you both to be in this place of paradise with one another? And I was just like, oh, wow. Yeah. There's a lot of things that are really good, that have been really good. And also there's a lot of just reality between being in relation, struggling through loss and surviving through loss, and also then all the other aspects of life, right? Business, pleasure, for a minute, you're just like, oh, what is pleasure?
do we even have the time? We're
Right.
so busy, right?
Yeah.
We're not programmed for enjoyment. Most of us are programmed for struggle, because that's what our ancestors did, right? They had to work hard to survive. Right. They had to just work hard, to put bread on the table, and
Right. And thank God for them.
Yeah.
They are the reason that we're here. And also, like, ancestrally, do I need to keep that same paradigm of struggle? Do I need to?
No.
I don't want to.
They didn't want it. They struggled so that we could be free. That's the dichotomy, or that's the irony. But so to get back to like the more scientific piece of this, a few years after my whatever out of body experience, I came across the work of Dr. David R. Hawkins, who is no longer with us, but he also used to live in Sedona, and he has written several books. One of them is Power versus Force, and then also Letting Go, which are amazing books. And basically, by reading his stuff, I was starting to find words or ways to explain what I was actually doing. So David Hawkins gave us the scale of consciousness. In the scale of consciousness, basically, he explains that there's states of being that are correlated with how we feel emotionally, worldviews, and also vibrational states that are measurable. And so he spent a lot of his time while he was alive measuring different states of being, and found out that shame and guilt are two of the most lowest vibrational frequencies. They're 10 and 20. And then courage is at 200. Courage is kind of like the midline or the dividing line. And then everything above courage gets better and better, meaning that if we or I vibrate predominantly in a field or in a state of that's beneath courage, so anger or anxiety or whatnot, grief, my life force or my life is slanted towards death and decay, and the more you live in shame and guilt, the faster this process happens. And the same is true for above the 200. The higher you are above, or the more you are away from the 200, the higher you go, the more life flows. So essentially, when you're living in a vibrational state of 500 to 600, which is huge, it's a huge jump actually. Your experience of life is peace, love, bliss, flow, all the things that we want to experience. So in a way, and this is not just David Hawkins, but also Einstein told us this. So this is where the science really comes in, because David Hawkins was a very, very well respected and well-known psychiatrist. So he was, a real scientist. Yeah. Very acknowledged. And then Einstein obviously was a real scientist also. And Einstein also told us that if we're not living in the reality that we want to be living in, it's just that we're not a vibrational match, right? It's just that we're not vibrating basically at 500, because all of us, we want to live at the 500 level, which I call your paradise. I look at it as like we're currently on our little planet that's maybe 300, 400. There's all these other little different planets and universes around us. One of them is our paradise, the one that vibrates at 500. And so my job that I see as is like I help people bridge the gap from where they are to really navigating themselves, and also getting help vibrationally in getting to this paradise place as fast as possible. And so to me, it's all based on science. It's all based on energy. It's not really therapy. It's not really strategies. It's not really, it's very different than anything that's out there. And in terms of like the couple space, because we're really not working with psychological frameworks, or even, maybe a little bit of spiritual frameworks, but it's really more geared on understanding energetic principles, and learning to work with your own, and also learning to work as a couple with your nervous systems together, basically, because our nervous systems are our energy. It's our wiring, right, for our house. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you said it's science, because it is taking the woo-woo out of it. And then even like talk therapy, I feel like sometimes you can just be talking about the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, and then there's no resolve, or when the issue comes up, it's still an issue. And what I'm seeing, because we've been working with you for I think it's 3 months now, right? And
2, I think.
2, something like that, 2 or 3. That there's progress that is, if you just, put your head down and do the work, if you just show up for it, instead of avoid or keep really being attached to the old pattern. I feel like that was like probably the biggest thing that I witnessed in the both of us. It was just like, well, I don't want to, but I want to, then it works. And it's like, oh, it's easy. I don't even really have to think about it. I'm just doing it, and then it's better, and then it works, right? That might sound really vague.
Yes, and if part of what you're describing is, the part of like the wanting is the conscious mind, and then the subconscious mind who really dominates everything that we do in a sense.
Yeah.
And so, anybody that's tried to stick to a New Year's resolution knows how well the first 2 days go, and then it goes all out the window, right? And when you're working with energy or with the quantum shifting, it's almost like you're able to find the things in the subconscious or in your field that are keeping you repeating the same pattern. And then someone like me or somebody that's trained in either family constellations or I've developed an advanced form of family constellations, which is called intuitive quantum disentanglement. And there's other forms of that type of work, shamanism. We're able to basically do the work for you, right? We can't necessarily work on our own subconscious and our own energy field, but we could do it on other people. And I don't know of any other, coaching program or therapy modality that really works on you, basically, where you really just have to show up, you just have to come to sessions, Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we do, obviously, but yeah.
It's a critical part
Yeah.
of what we do. I know you've had like incredible experience. I mean, so have I, but I don't know if there's anything you want to share about that.
Yeah, the IQD sessions and the sessions that have been for me or for our relationship or for our relationship to business or however it showed up. It's kind of like if you go to the airport and there's a long line, but there's no one in it. And you're like, really? I have to walk through all this zigzag? These sessions it feels like I don't have to walk through that zigzag and there's just like an opening off to the side. And it's just like, whoa, that line, I thought I had to do all this or walk through this whole path and I didn't. So it feels like I've gained like years of experience and wisdom to overcome the things I thought I had to overcome. But I feel like I don't have to overcome them anymore. I just feel like the train tracks were shifted.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just simply outside of your awareness, right? And then that's a lot of this work.
Well, yeah, and a part of it is like literally imagine that that there's levels, and so there's different realities, right, at any given time. And so let's say you're living in the 400 reality where maybe you're not super confident and your self-esteem is still a little wobbly, and you maybe you're struggling with money a little bit or with receiving or attachment style stuff or whatever. But what we do with what we teach you, the techniques that we teach you to implement on your own, and then also with the IQDs, we literally lift you into the next level. And so there, the version of you doesn't have those issues anymore or has them at a lower degree, so it's literally like it's not like you're becoming a different person, but you're stepping into the more evolved or more free versions of yourself. It's almost like in the lower vibrational realities, you're more wrapped up in other people's energies and doubts and, stuff that makes you feel bad about yourself or less confidence. And we slowly but surely unwrap you so that you can be freer and freer and freer. And
clearing out the cobwebs.
yes.
That's what it feels like. Yeah. And what I can share in our dynamic in the relationship, because, we've been doing this work while we're still together, while we're trying to and working towards strengthening our bond between one another. It's a journey. Oh my gosh. I'm just like, okay, I'm like really sensitive this week because of what we just talked about. I just need like a little bit more understanding or this or that, because it's like, it's not just, okay, clearing out the cobwebs and like raising your consciousness. It's like, oh my God, this has been in me for lifetimes. And now I have to get used to what it feels like removed because I don't want it there. And then you're just like, there's like a hole in my side, except I've wanted the tumor gone,
Yeah.
So now we're reacclimating and then learning what it looks like in relation to have the pieces of us more whole as we're relating with one another. So it's just, it's trippy actually, because I'm like, we're coming into these conversations like geared up and ready to be like how they used to be, except they're not. And that's good because that's how we want them to be. And then you're just like, I actually don't know how to have this conversation.
Blank slate.
Yeah. Which that's good,
Yeah. And in the progression through the program this far, it's like a layer falls away, a layer falls away, a layer falls away. and they just keep falling away. Sometimes like I've been hoping for that to fall away, and other things I didn't even know it was there and it falls away. I'm like, oh, life is better now, and I can enjoy life better now, and our relationship is easier, and my relationship with myself becomes easier. And I don't know how to describe it other than share the benefits I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make logical sense to me.
Yeah.
Maybe to anyone. What's your take on that? Is there logic behind this?
There is logic, and
Of course.
it's taken me like 20 years and many, many failed relationships to figure this out, so yes.
Perfect. Yeah. To listen.
Yeah, so the logic comes from understanding attachment styles and how we were raised as babies, and really understanding that they very much attachment styles influence how our brain develops. And so as when you're a baby and you have somebody that really takes care of you and you're well taken care of and you feel secure and you feel like, oh, there is somebody that when I cry, they understand, they try to figure out what I need, they spend time with me, they don't get impatient. You would develop a much different self-image than a baby that has somebody who sometimes tends to them, or is irritated, or has other kids, or is busy with work, or whatever the circumstances might be, right? That the message for that baby is more like, oh, you're a burden, and that baby most likely, or the anxious baby, will develop a way of being where they're always going to look like, what are you doing? What are you needing? So that I behave in a way that pleases you, so that you pay attention or you stay around, it's very detrimental to somebody's self-image, because you end up not knowing who you are and what you really need, because you just are so focused on pleasing the other person. And it's very crazy making, and it's very unsettling and very anxiety producing. And then the third one is the avoidant, where the baby just almost never got its needs met, and it was just either clearly communicated. Some of it is cultural, some of it is really people being full on neglected, or just parents being too stressed out or whatever. But that baby basically learned or decided that the safest, most safe survival strategy was to not rely on anybody. Right. So then later in life, when you want to have a close relationship and you have a program that says, oh, but relying on somebody is not safe, right? It's clashing. And so most of the relationship issues that we see come from the attachment styles clashing. And oftentimes a more anxious person will find a more avoidant person, and they'll kind of push each other, because the avoidant wants closeness, so it feels very attracted to the anxious. The anxious wants to just shower, but then inadvertently the avoidant gets overwhelmed, because for the avoidant the program says danger, 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 this is getting too close, and then they push the anxious away, and then the anxious is all like, what did I do wrong? All I did was just wanting to have connection, and thus the dance of the confusion begins, and neither of them are right or wrong. And so the reason why you're starting to feel different is because what we focus on is creating the secure attachment. So the stability comes, and the relaxedness in your brain and your nervous system comes from a secure attachment. And the beautiful thing is, even if we didn't have that as a child, or even if we had it and something traumatic happened and that's why we lost it, if we are with somebody that we truly want to bond with and create a stable, amazing relationship with, these attachment styles are malleable and they can be healed. And there's specific ways, and one of the specific ways has to do with how we make love. And so we teach couples a specific way of making love that's based on bonding, so that the secure attachment can happen. And when that happens, you just become a totally different person, because you're confident, you're relaxed, your brain works completely differently because you're not in fight or flight most of the time. So is that the logic?
That is the logic. That is the logic. And those pieces, in my experience this far, have been so relevant to how I view our relationship, and things that I thought, I've said this before, but things that I thought were me or her or our dynamic that were fixed, all of a sudden aren't relevant at all. And it was never about her or me in those cases at all. It was just about something unrelated to us, that programs we were running.
Yeah.
And so, we're actually experiencing a more secure attachment style. Of course, that'll develop even more over time, but I
Yes.
think we're getting hints of it and it
Yeah.
feels very relieving. It's like, oh, there's not danger every other day. Actually, I thought there was, and I don't know why I took that into this situation, but that is very logical and I totally get it. And I've been itching to say or to hear more about the bonding based lovemaking, and that's been something that's been very powerful for us and very simple and very enjoyable, and it definitely goes against everything that I learned through this culture that treats
Oh
sex
my.
very poorly, in my opinion, and I see that even more clearly now. Yeah, I mean, I've seen for a long time that, okay, not all of the food is healthy. A lot of it is poisoned in a way, or the water, or the air, or the this, or the that, or the way that we treat XYZ. But I never saw how we treat sex to be just as distorted or inverted or toxic. And now I'm starting to get the full picture, and it makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I felt when I came across this work. And trigger warning. I mean, you can talk about this a little bit too, but so when I came across the bonding-based lovemaking, my second marriage was in deep despair, and I really was I would have done anything to save it, and was open because of that. I was open at that time. I was had just built a multi-six-figure business in the women's empowerment space, very much based on like embracing your sexuality will make you tons of money. So I was very much promoting that one orgasm a day
Sure.
is the minimum, and that's what you do as an empowered woman, and that's how you make your money.
Yes.
And that's what it means to be in your feminine power and all of that. So just for you guys to understand, kind of like setting the stage where this bonding-based lovemaking entered the stage for me, because it was challenging at first to wrap my head around, but I was also desperate enough. So bonding-based lovemaking is a different way of lovemaking that relies on oxytocin. Most of the way that we make love depends on dopamine. Dopamine gets released with novelty and with just needing to have more stimulus and excitement and so forth. And it's actually a highly addictive substance. It's 13 times more addictive than heroin, which is kind of explains why it's so confusing and so deceiving at times. And
Oh yeah.
and what researchers have found is that when we actually have orgasms, it's similar. When you look at brain scans, it's similar to taking cocaine or actually taking heroin. And since we don't know this, we think it's totally normal to put our brain chemistry on those types of roller coasters if we actually were conscious that what we're doing is giving our brain a jolt as if we were taking cocaine or heroin. Most of us would not be doing that on a daily basis, weekly
of us,
basis,
yes.
never, like yearly basis even, right?
Right.
Because what comes up in brain chemistry must go down. And if you've ever done any drugs, it doesn't even have to be hard drugs, that you feel shitty for a little while after, and it takes a little while. And so it's the same with these you call it the passion cycle. Is when we have an orgasm, it takes actually 2 weeks for us to come back to equilibrium. And people experience it differently. Some people just feel tired and irritable and don't know why, and just go for the next, either next orgasm or next coffee or next whatever gives them the energy.
Because I feel like so many people are just actually living and existing within this passion cycle. But you're
Yes.
saying it's just 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But if you keep doing it, then it's forever.
Yeah, because most of us, we self-medicate because we don't know where the fatigue or the irritability or the depression is coming from. We don't put it together with sex, and I didn't at first. And then once I started putting it together, I'm like, oh my God, like that's where my fatigue's coming from. That's where my depression's coming from. That's where, my irritability is coming from. And, you can share a little bit maybe about, how your journey has been. Experiencing it, and if you had resistance or if it made sense right away.
We have had no resistance you know. And I mean, a lot of that is our situation, you know. And everyone, I had someone just yesterday be like, oh, are you sure you're not pregnant again, you know, because everyone's like, when are you going to have another baby, which is so sweet. And also, you know, for us, there's a lot there, so we're very much wanting to be ready and not wanting to procreate until we're ready. So, you know, so for us, this is something that's made a lot of sense. And so if that means like foregoing the orgasm, even though my orgasm isn't what's making a baby,
Yeah.
then I'm like, okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
You know, let's figure that out.
Yeah.
Because the science behind it is you can't ignore it. You know, once you know the book that you're writing a book, we'll talk about that, and the book that you've been working with and referencing. I mean, there's the facts. They're facts. And I majored in biology. Tell me how something works, and I will do it. You know, especially from a biological, neurochemical standpoint, it's science.
Yeah.
And so then it's science.
Yeah, and so the science part is that nature actually wants us to procreate and entices us to the dopamine pleasure to do that, right? And so a way of, I actually believe that the original human being or the original men and women, they knew how to make love in this more gentle, more calm way of being. There is a high, it's different than an orgasm. It's amazing, and it's not just, it doesn't just happen in the bedroom, it kind of lingers with you, you know, throughout the day. And this is the part that people don't want to hear. They're like, what, you're giving up orgasm? Like, that's boring. It's like, no, you're gaining something completely different.
That's the trigger.
You know, yes.
That's the trigger.
It's like, what? No orgasm? Yeah, so I actually believe that our bodies are wired for this different way of lovemaking, and that like just like celebrating or having a big piece of cake, you know, we would make babies and enjoy it and have like a bang bong, you know, like boom, like every once in a while when we really wanted to have a baby. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the time we would enjoy this very other way, and it would be very enjoyable, very pleasurable. It's very physically pleasurable. It's very sensual. It is very sexual also. It's not platonic. It's not just cuddling. Mm-hmm. And there's so many misconceptions that people have. Yeah.
And the stability,
yes.
You know, when you said even like, you know, back in like ancient ways, it's like more than anything, you know, if we have to survive together, we have to be able to do that. We have to be able to wake up and like each other every day, you know, and keep doing that. And then, like you said, when there's no like life or death situation every other day, it's easier to do that, you know, and when we're not riding the waves of this emotionality, when we can actually have what feels like this secure bond. And for someone like myself, like I was the baby that created the anxious, like the definition of the anxious attachment style. So it's creating security within my existence that I've never known. And you know, it's almost kind of like the bottom's dropped out from under you so many times, and now the ground's stable. I'm still like holding onto the railing. Mm-hmm. I really just don't know if it's gonna go yet. So.
Yeah.
And that's a way to exist, you know, and thrive. And I think that's one of the things that you've shared with us through the work is once you get to this place of understanding and being in this higher frequency, then the thriving really starts to happen. The paradise life starts to just accumulate around you.
Yeah, and the way that we describe it is, so bonding-based lovemaking is a practice that you really commit to every day, and I believe it's the practice that really creates and keeps a sacred union going. It's a very practical thing. And it's a third entity that you're creating, like a little egg at first, where you're putting it together, you're putting your energy into it, but to your daily practice. And as you do that consistently, it's very important to be consistent with this and kind of scheduled. But it really makes it work. It's part of the thing that makes it work. The egg will start growing and growing and growing, and it will become a bubble. And once you're in the bubble, you need to maintain the bubble. But at the same time, you're very immune to a lot of the outside stresses, and you're able to just be inseparable, be on the same page, be in sync. A lot of the stuff that, you know, people think they're not compatible, or their communication styles are too different, or their personalities are too different, or blah, 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 you know, it all falls away. Mm-hmm. Because you're just in sync, you're lighthearted, you're playful. You just respond completely differently to the world. Yeah.
It feels like the sensation of everything in this bonding style of lovemaking is heightened. Like you're getting the real full experience of lovemaking.
Yeah.
And it makes the old way, which is very like numbing and dulling.
I want to say like
Mechanical.
cannibalistic is what wants to come
Yeah.
to me.
And mechanical.
It just
yeah.
makes it not as even necessary. It's like this is better.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and I think that what might get in people's way of being like, oh, no orgasm. It's like, well, you just didn't know there's something better than that puny little orgasm that you're so
Exactly.
attached to.
That's like for about, 10 to 45 seconds, 90 seconds. Whatever, wherever you're
5
at,
seconds.
whatever.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is lasting. And I love, maybe you can share a little bit more, because I know you've said since you've learned this, of course, you've had orgasms, and
We have
then
oopses,
you're
yes.
noticing what it does for you,
Yes.
right, on a biological level. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. It definitely makes me very tired, very my normal is that I have energy, that I'm energized, that I can do a lot of stuff. I get a lot of stuff done. I do it with joy. I do it with excitement and just feeling good. And when an oops happens, every day just becomes like I have to push myself and I just want to lay down and nap. And, it's such a difference. At this point, it's like, I know how good I normally feel. Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And then also the friction, with my partner obviously goes through the roof. And normally when we stick to, really stick to everything, we don't have any friction. So when you have that, then it's very frustrating when you're just a little bit out of sync even, when you're used to just being so on the same page and being in sync. So
Yeah. Because I hear from a lot of the couples that we work with, it's like, we don't know how we're here again.
Yeah.
I thought we were over this, and
Yeah.
here we are again.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
Ah.
yeah.
So your O face is an oops face.
Oopsgasm.
That's funny.
Yeah, and what you're saying, it really feels more like a sneeze now. It's like, dang, it wasn't even good. It's like when you have the other, when your brain has learned to enjoy the other, or relax enough to have the other. Yeah. So one way I also describe it is, it's a much slower and relaxer way of making love. So you can get into a very meditative state with each other, and almost feels like you're being lifted on a mushroom cloud, and you're just spiraling through the universe. It has a cosmic, very transcendental, very spiritual nature to it, but also, I think what you were alluding to is like the sweetness, the emotional sweetness, and the innocence, and the just feeling yummy, just kisses feeling yummy, touch feeling yummy, and deeply satisfying. And part of that is oxytocin gets released by pleasure in the moment. So when we learn to slow down and really allow the pleasure in the moment, the more we learn that, and the more the nervous system relaxes and knows that that's safe, the more the oxytocin flows, the more you're bonding, because oxytocin is the bonding hormone. And oxytocin has so many different benefits also. It's really an anti-aging hormone or neurotransmitter, and good for the immune system. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and when you say that, you mentioned once the nervous system realizes it can slow down and be safe.
It's okay.
Because and that's takes time. It's not just okay, today I've decided this is going to happen, and so it'll happen today. Yeah. It's, for us through this journey, it's we're like just now feeling that, because the body, the neurochemistry, the dopamine, I mean, it's so rigged, and our society has it set up that way.
Yes.
We just have it set up that way. And it feels like a totally different realm of living,
Yeah.
It's great.
It is.
So great.
I compare it to fast food versus a 5-star Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
It really feels like,
What kind of fast food?
I
I'm
don't
joking.
know. It doesn't even matter, you know, but it's just like you go to a fast food place and like, okay, here's your meal, and it didn't cost very much, and like the people aren't very happy about being there, and then it's just a little bit of food, and it's just weird. I don't know, I haven't had fast food in a while, but it's just not very, it's not that great of an experience overall. It's quick and it's over with, and it just doesn't even do that much for you. But you go to a 5-star restaurant, and it's a whole experience. Everyone is happy to be there, and they're genuinely serving you with care and time and making sure everything's just right for you. And then
Pulling
the
out your
meal
chair.
looks good and it tastes exquisite. And the chef has spent a decade on preparing, you know, this presentation and the exact flavor profile and where they source the ingredients. That really feels like the difference. So when people say, oh, no orgasm, I'm like, why do you need the fast food anyway? You can go to 5-star all the time, and it's not even more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's not even more expensive.
There's like no difference. It's just better.
But it's training. It's
It's really training. It's you're learning a new skill. You're teaching your body a new skill. It's like going to the gym and building new muscles and pathways. And
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think oh God, it's like I want to throw up a little bit. It's like you have to be committed. And most people who are in relationship are already committed. And then what I witness is the things that have been falling away from the IQDs. Those are the things that make you want to run from the commitment. In my experience, and in me talking about my experience, because there are all the things that you're just like, I'm not safe. This is what this means. He's not going to love me. You know, all these, I'm not worthy, all of that programming. I have to do all the work from the ancestors, all of it. Because if the commitment's there, then it gets to be better. And I just, you know, I was sharing with Erin earlier, it's like, there's a lot of separation happening right now, and not just in people with union, but there's a lot of people who, you know, we know and love who are separating, and that's fine if that's what's, you know, for the highest and what's meant. But it just has me fascinated, because this work has me just over here thinking like, oh, this really would help everyone. This is not like singularly for people who want to
not just for vegans.
It's not just for vegans. It's also not for people who just eat at 5-star restaurants or people who just want fast food. It's for, I think, anyone who wants to have a relationship that can remotely feel healthy.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. You know, there's couples that are in sexless marriages because they have found that brings them more stability. They would rather have the friendship and the companionship and just give up sex or have sex on the side somewhere and feel guilty about it and not good about themselves. Mm-hmm. And so this brings the attraction and the honeymoon feelings back, even if people haven't been sexually active for like decades. Yeah. It's amazing. So it's great for older couples. It's great for couples that just had babies or where the women are going through menopause, or it's great for couples that are on a roller coaster all the time. It's great for couples that are new and they don't want to repeat the mistakes from the past. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And just realizing the impact physiologically and therefore, of course, emotionally and all of that. It feels like something that we should know.
Yes.
You know, just like, okay, when I drink coffee, I feel like I have adrenaline and maybe I'll get extra tired later. Or if I stay up all night, I know I'm going to fall asleep for like 2 days or something. And if I orgasm, then my body will have an actual experience. It's not just like, oh, no big deal, I just ran a marathon, I'm good. Yeah. Like it's not like that. It actually makes an impact. And knowing that mentally and logically, and by reading the book that we're reading in your program, it's helping me understand the legitimacy physiologically and therefore how it plays into my life. Like what role does it have in my life? Like knowing the impact it makes. Yeah.
And I mean, the beautiful thing is, you know, unlike therapy, I think therapy has somewhere between maybe 20 to 50% success rate. Maybe like this works 100% when people stick to it, you know. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why people aren't able to stick to this attachment style stuff, so we help. That's why it's good to have somebody, you know, I mean, you can try it on your own, yes. and depending on, where you're at with your attachment style stuff, but it's great to have the IQDs to help with that. Yeah.
Right, because even just reading through all of the testimonials and the science and the history, right? Because it talks about Buddhism and ancient Egypt and all of this stuff.
Taoism.
Right. It's still that interactive work, like you're saying, we just show up and then you're doing it for us, is so critical.
And we do it in a community also, which I think is hugely, at first people are like, what? We're going to learn a new way of lovemaking and talk about all our intimate stuff in front of other people. And then, I mean, how is that for you?
I love it. I'm like, oh, I love people. So Erin might be a better one to ask. But I feel like when we can see reflections in others, we feel more validated. And, even like you're sharing, like, people who've been in couples who've been together for 30, 50 years, who've been in a sexless marriage for 10 years, I know that happens, but does anyone really want that? Does anyone really want that? I don't think so.
And nobody gets married thinking that's going to be us, right? And then inadvertently, but also, the myth is that it's just normal. It's just normal that, you're not going to be into him anymore. And like after a little while, it's just normal that when you go through menopause, you're just going to lose your interest. And we've just accepted these things that are true if you stay in the procreation dopamine paradigm, but they're not true at all when you switch over to the oxytocin. Even people that have like medical diagnoses like ED or paper thin lining of the vagina, where literally physically they're not supposed to be able to have any kind of intimacy or intercourse anymore. They're able to because their body just starts rejuvenating and opening up and lubricating and yes.
Right, because physiologically,
Yes.
it's creating the safety in the container of the relationship. So,
Yes.
So tell us about the book you're writing.
Well, the book is called The Bliss Codes, and it's a story and a manual to help couples understand what you need to be doing to create your own paradise and intimacy. There will be more practical, really a practical guide in it on how to actually do this bliss bonding. And we'll have little links to resources and videos that you can watch as supplement, and then we're also going to be teaching it as an online course and have a community with it where people can ask questions and interact. And hopefully that all be coming out in November.
right.
Awesome.
So, depending on when you're watching this, it may be available now. The link will be below if that's the case.
Yes.
You mentioned that there'll be a community aspect. So just to kind of pitch in about that.
Yes.
Yeah, it feels vital, actually, that there is a community aspect, because watching other couples go through whatever this transition means to them and how it impacts them, it's not only reaffirming that, okay, people are going through something similar and have their own trials and tribulations with it and whatnot, but people have also expressed that us being around them has helped them. So it's just very obvious that that's important. And I think I felt like uncomfortable maybe on the first meeting with people. I was like, oh wait, really? I don't even know them. Like, but now it's just like, yeah, of course, this is so normal, and it feels more harmless. Like the way that Careza and this form of bonding, really, it feels more harmless. Like I'm here to help her feel good in a really, what's the word? I guess harmless describes it, harmless way. Whereas before it was all about like me and I want to feel good. And yeah, I want her to feel good too, but this is really about me. And now it's about us and about creating a safe, harmless joy. Like it kind of removes the whole problem of harming the other person through the act.
And me versus you also, right? And all of that. And yes, you really, by you focusing on the other person and the union, you're the one that benefits the most in the end. It's funny how that works.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The energetics of it all, probably the biggest thing for me that I realized through this was the energy of giving versus the energy of taking, which is, it's hilarious that was like so profound for me. But that's that's just the energy that I have been in. You know, it's like the train track I was on, and bringing that to my awareness. It's like, oh, of course, if I'm the one that's like hungry for affection, all I'm going to do is gobble it up. And so then why would he want to give it to me? If I'm going to be giving it, then it'll be this beautiful cyclic flow, you know, much like you're saying, harmless.
Yeah. Plus, generally, you know, sweetness or any kind of touch is usually connected to turning the other person on or wanting something from the other person, especially when you're an adult, and especially if you're an adult man. Like, you don't get any physical touch unless it's connected to intercourse generally. Right. And I saw a study at one point where it really described how touch starved we all are. And I think the average married person gets like a peck on the cheek, you know, like two seconds a day maybe, or something, you know.
Well,
It was startling.
yeah. And I think too, one of the things that you share in your work is that there's generally this expectation, like, oh, if I am going to be, you know, touchy or lovey, especially if it's at night and we're in bed, then there's an expectation that that's going to lead to something.
Yeah.
And with this way of relating in this work, that's not the case. It's like we just actually get to be in a place of bonding throughout the day, in the morning, in the evening, and then creating the rest of our like lovemaking schedule as we want, versus this expectation or like, oh God, he's touching me, he must want something.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's also not reliant anymore on like being in the mood, or is she in the mood, or one person always having to initiate. There's no more performance, there's no more pursuing, there's no more, it's just really giving your, like having set times and giving your body the opportunity to get turned on, and being physically intimate with each other. In smaller, a little bit smaller amounts than you are physically, bonding with each other. That's not, it doesn't include intercourse. So it's very clear for the brain when intercourse is happening and when it's just comforting touching. And so the nervous system can relax and just enjoy.
And it's helped our comforting touching times, or just when we're snuggling or cuddling or giving a kiss before the other person goes out to do something in the day. It's so much juicier, and it's almost like I don't necessarily feel the physiological need or drive to turn it into something because it already is satisfying.
Yeah.
Whereas before it's like that meant something, but it wasn't valuable in and of itself. Whereas now that touch and affection is very valuable, very valuable.
And, you know, men that have been in sexless marriages and starved for a long time, once they transition into that, they're like realizing how much their every day was driven by thoughts about sex or not having sex, or and women walking by and feeling guilty and trying to figure out how, you know, to deal with their needs and not hurting their wife because they love their wife, and just hugely, you know, confusing. And then learning this and bringing intimacy back to their marriages and their wives, and then becoming free and relaxed and realizing like, oh my God, I have like this whole other bandwidth over there that was constantly just busy with like, when am I going to get some? How am I going to get some? Will I ever get some? How can I live like this? Like, how much longer can I live like this? You know,
I'm dying.
I need to do something. But if I do something, I'm doomed. If I don't do something, I'm doomed.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, after you write this book, I want there to be like even if it needs to be like a PG-13 version for the sex ed courses, because it's, you know, as we're diving down this work, it's, you know, in some of these testimonials, it's like men who stop masturbating, like have clearer vision and less depression. They get to go off of their anxiety medications and all this crazy stuff where you're just like, I'm sorry, what? Like, just because you stopped ejaculating? This is fascinating, versus the other end of the spectrum that we're all like, you know, being programmed from I don't know who, whatever, that is just incorrect, you know, because as young people growing into our adolescence, we don't know differently, and no one's teaching us.
It's so confusing. I always thought sex had to do with love, and then, you know, then you find out very quickly that most guys don't see it that way. And then you're like, oh man, I'm so stupid. Like,
Right. But, you know, for the young men, for the young women, it's like really, you know, I think this is just a drop in the what I see as the ripple effect, you know, through this work, because if and when anyone is interested in adopting this for themselves, it's a game changer in life, you know, and all of us are here to live our lives. So I always want to be figuring out what's going to enhance that, what's going to help me be a better person, you know, be a better lover, right? Sure, that's one aspect of my life, but I have many aspects of my life. I want to be better at all of them. So of course I'm going to, like you said, when you were desperate, but I don't think you have to be desperate. You know, it's like, how can we shift it so that we can change the generational.
Yeah. I want it to be
issues.
normal. I want it to be like yoga or like, you know, where people just know this is what's good for your health. And, you know, the other thing is when you want to make babies. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to make babies. Most people who have babies don't want to make babies, but then they have a baby, you know,
Yeah.
which is fine.
it's a
And-
great form of birth control also.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It feels similar to the aha moment when someone realizes, oh, what I'm eating is impacting me and how I feel. And then it becomes so obvious, but beforehand, you just don't even think of that.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that this isn't something that's talked about more. Like, as normal as yoga is and eating healthy is, I can't believe no one.
It will
I
be.
can't believe we
It
didn't
will
hear about
be.
this until
It
we met
will
you.
be.
You know,
People are
We're doing
open.
it.
People are opening up to it. People are getting excited. People are not just looking at me like, "Who are you and what are you saying?" You know, people like you. It's extremely helpful to have other people talk about it, not just me.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, we've covered a lot of really juicy things, really fascinating things. And people listening this might be the first time they're hearing it, or it might not be. But for anyone that's not as familiar with this, is there anything that you want to really drive home or make sure that you convey while we're here in this setting?
I do believe that this is the key to having harmony in our intimate relationships. And I would encourage you to read Marnia's book. That's the book that I came across and that opened my eyes to this because her story was very similar, where relationship after relationship just fell apart and she was just not going to have it and wanted to figure out a way. And she's really lived 30 years of bliss. And when you look at her, like she's in her late 70s now, I believe, but she looks like she's in her 40s and glowing. And so that's what convinced me, you know, just looking at her and like it was undeniable what it did, you know. So read the book. Her book is a little bit thicker and a lot more science. My book is going to be a little bit more easy to read. Read both. And
And what's her book called?
her book is called Cupid's Poison Arrow, and mine is called The Bliss Codes. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the main really aha that has changed my life is that we don't have power over other people or other circumstances. We only have power over our own self and over our own state of being. So whatever we can do, or essentially, if you make that your priority, your life will look very differently. Mine went from, chronic fatigue, burnout, bankruptcy. Not living my purpose to fully living my purpose, serving thousands of people, having multi-six-figure businesses, being in an amazing relationship, being healthy, and it didn't take very long.
Yeah. Yeah. In perspective.
Yeah, and it came from making my energy management the priority. Yeah, so.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons that we were excited to work with you is because we work with couples a lot with High Vibe Collective. And so, being able to incorporate your work into our couples retreats, anyone who's going to come to Sedona or even virtually, it is the thing that I feel like, oh, dear God, everyone needs this. So
Like, first and foremost, let's fix this,
And then,
like-
yeah, because we get a lot of couples, let's say, who are struggling in so many aspects of life, right? Like infidelity or infertility and, on the edge of divorce. And oftentimes we get, just one person who comes, right, to heal themselves. Maybe the other's open, maybe they're not. But I feel like wherever anyone's at, this is a really beautiful introduction to it. And even just dipping your toe in it, because there's no timeline. I see.
And even if you're single, I learned most of this as I was single because my second marriage actually did not work out. And But it made me even more committed to this, you know?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just start. And then the nervous system regulation, like it will catch up as you're doing the work.
Yeah. And if you're single, you know, this, like, it doesn't mean that you have to be celibate. It just means educating yourself and seeing if you can get oxytocin, if you can get massages, how you can get more of the oxytocin while you're single, and then introducing it to, if this resonates with you, introducing it to the people that you're dating, and just getting a sense if they would be even open to something like this. If this really resonates with you, and you're in a place where you're like, oh my God, like who, you know, who will ever, like, who can I ever talk to about this on the first or second date? I would encourage you to do it, because there is people that this resonates with, and if it resonates with you, you can definitely find somebody that will resonate with you and have this in life. And because I tried it the other way, I tried to settle it first and do it their way, and then later, you know, when we were ready to really commit, and by the time that never happened, you know, the really committing never happened, because we just had our fun, and kind of the problems started happening. So,
Well, yeah, and I think I love that. Yeah, to encourage the people that are single, like, you just get to have what you want from the beginning.
yeah,
You don't have to
go
settle
yeah,
and then
go through the
create.
tumultuous beginnings, or, you know,
No.
falling in love, falling out of love, and no.
Yeah. Cool. Especially if you have the tools. You know, I think a lot of us find ourselves in these dark places because we just don't have the light. We don't have the tool yet. And so if this is a tool you pick up along the way and you happen to be single, great, use it. You know, you don't have to like set it aside until you're in a committed relationship a year and a half in and then pick the tool back up.
Yeah,
I mean, you can do that too, but
yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thanks for taking the time to share the message that
Yeah.
you.
There's more. There'll be
Yeah.
more. We want to do this more.
Yeah, and
as-
we're
as
doing
the
live
work
workshops
evolves.
at High Vibe
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
anybody in Sedona. Yeah.
Workshops. If you're coming to Sedona, look us up. Carolin's doing workshops there as well. And you can always come for a retreat, which would be incredible for you and anyone you love, because it'll impact, you know, like I said, the ripple effect. Right?
Totally life altering. Totally life altering. It's like, that's just saying a little bit about it.
And you know, as we've been in this work, I mean, we're doing so much, but this has been what I feel like a critical foundation. We've had so many people come up to us that have, you know, seen our journey over the past few years and just been like, wow, you guys are really doing the work. Like, keep showing up, you know, like you're shining, you look younger, you're thriving. I don't know if you can look younger, but
I am.
but yeah, it's proof, you know, it does feel like proof. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having
Yeah,
me.
thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, until next time.
See you next time.
Yay.
Cool.